tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity Through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
I want to thank everyone for being right on time. Welcome to Breaking the Biz podcast with the Yes I Can crew. We have got a great guest and a great show tonight. We have Caroline Burruss, who is an agency founder. She works in entertainment, social good, music festivals, venues, tours, the whole nine yards. She's a sophisticated brand marketer inside a killer sales executive. What's amazing is she brings 25 plus years of experience pioneering connections across live events, audience experiences, sponsorships, and carefully curated branded integration that generates growth revenue built to scale. Her approach is rooted in deep within her layered understanding of the artist, the audience, and the community within the brand event ecosystem. She develops savvy sales methods for robust pipelines with ambitious monetization strategies. She builds consensus across diverse stakeholders to usher deeper relationships that create the runway for long-standing client partnerships. On top of that, some of the events that she's worked on, you might have heard a few of these: Coachella, Stagecoach, Flog, Gnaw, Carnival, the Hangout Festival, Electric Forest, Firefly. Some of the brands that she's worked with: Red Bull, Toyota, Kellogg's, Converse, PlayStation, Lyft, Sirius XM Radio, YouTube, and Estee Lauder. I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everyone.
Quite an impressive resume there.
Well, that's very nice. I feel like that it's really nice. It's funny to hear it read back to you. You're like, well, okay, thanks. I really appreciate it. Made me sound cool.
You are cool. I can already tell. I want to know, when did you, it's kind of like music oriented within all of that and all the different brands. When did you fall in love with music?
My dad is a really big music fan, and our connection was going and driving on Sunday in this old convertible he had. We lived in Alabama. He managed Sears stores, if anybody remembers Sears, at the department store. So we lived in different towns in the South, mostly small towns. So we would go out and find a great radio station. And so he was really my main connection with music. And we lived in the Deep South. And I think in the Deep South, you were kind of, your family either gravitates to like Motown and old school soul, which ours did, or country music. I mean, I don't think we had much of connection country music, but definitely Motown and old school soul. So that was really it. And I had no imagination that I would ever end up working in the music business. I did okay in school. I went to the University of Georgia. I don't know, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but.
No, you're good. You're good.
I went to the University of Georgia and studied journalism and worked at the radio station, the free college radio station, as a volunteer DJ. I learned a lot about music. I was the news director, and then I ended up majoring in political science at Georgia. I had a radio show that was featuring bands from the town that my college was in, Athens, Georgia. And that was the time where B-52s had a really big record. REM had a big record. Widespread Panic. All these Athens bands, were really blowing up in the late 80s, early 90s. In the South, there were a lot of bands that were doing really well, touring around, selling their own CDs out of the back of their van. I ended up working on a music project with where I'm from, and it ended up growing up later in North Carolina. And a lot of, I would book a lot of bands. The bands would come to Athens. They would sleep on our floor. We'd make them a meal. We would, interview them at the radio station. But again, I didn't think that was a real job. So I think, this was in my young 20s. I worked on Capitol Hill for a senator, for Senator Nunn. I went in on a presidential campaign in 92. And when the guy I was working for won, which was Clinton in 92, 93, I realized I actually didn't want to work in politics. And I had sort of freelanced for bands for a really long time, kind of in college. Like I said, booking bands and making sure they had a place to stay and passing out posters, and it was kind of a passion project. So right when I left DC, 3 bands called me and said, "Hey, would you help us out with the project? We were going to put out our own record." And so it was really a bad time in the economy. There weren't that many jobs. I was waiting tables. I had nothing to lose. I didn't have anything. I had maybe a futon, which is everybody. Are you guys like, what are you even talking about? But it's like,
I know. Well, I know the futon.
Right. It's like as your sofa that then that night you could roll it down. It becomes your bed. I mean, that's all I had. So, you had nothing to lose, but to say, sure, I'll do this freelance project for you all. And I really just learned kind of from there. And I would say I'm jumping to like question 7, which is.
It's okay. I want to point out some things. One, I love how you mentioned you did politics. You were involved in it. The candidate wins, but you realize that's not what I want to do. And it's a very important thing to point out that sometimes you have to try different things to find out exactly what it is you want to do.
I think so.
I want to highlight that.
It's good data, right?
The other thing I want to highlight is the fact of sometimes you have to say yes, even though it might not be the right pay. It might not, you don't know what road it's going to lead to. Those bands coming to you saying, "Hey, we want you to help us, release this project." Real quickly, what were those 3 bands?
Hootie and the Blowfish, first band. And before their big record, they were friends from college. Like they were in that college scene trying to, book shows at that time. This was before they got signed to their big label. A band called Sex Police. Sorry, guys.
You're good.
They broke up and became Squirrel Nut Zippers. And right. Okay. My parents were not thrilled. They were really crushed. At the grocery store, they could walk down the push the cart down the aisle and say, "We're so proud of our daughter. She works in politics in DC." Then they're said, "Oh my gosh, our daughter's quit her job. She's waiting tables and working for a band called the Sex Police." They were crushed, absolutely crushed.
There's a lot of worse things you could have done.
They're okay. Yeah.
Not exactly the best thing you want to put on your resume.
It really isn't, Noah. You're not kidding. You're not kidding.
It's so awesome. So you take on, and for those of you who might be too young, Hootie and the Blowfish, when they were in the prime, extremely big records, music videos, and when music videos helped, sell and market a band. And we'll get to that obviously with your branding. Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to point out is all of the things that you did kind of all are tools in the tool belt, working with the bands, booking the bands, understanding how to get them to radio. When you were the young girl, what was the dream job? Like when you were, little girl, what was like, when I grow up, I want to be?
Here's what I'll say. I think I was mimicking what I heard my parents say. If I'm honest, I think I'm a late bloomer. I think I didn't really have a voice yet. I didn't have enough exposure yet to really have a clear idea of what I really liked and what I didn't like. In college, I did an internship and really loved it. It was in politics in Atlanta. And I went back and like aced my major. Like I loved it, and I got more confidence. I was never really a great student. I was pretty much Miss B, like maybe some C's, B plus maybe, but kind of a B.
B's nothing to sneeze about.
Nothing crazy, right? Yeah. So when I went back, I'd gained confidence through this internship and went back and like did really well in my major and like did really well. But I think it was almost like going to that next step where I had an internship in DC, and I was like, well, that's going to get me to the next 6 months. And then there was a recession. There were no jobs. There were not that many jobs. So when a band calls you or you can wait on tables, it was like, hey, I'm going to take it because there are not a ton of jobs right now. And I'll learn a lot. And I like these people. And ultimately, it was about how the band wasn't going to wait on a big major record company to pay them to put out a record, or CD or whatever. The bands had decided, we're going to record it. We're going to write our songs. We're going to record it ourselves. We're going to press it on our own. We're going to make our own t-shirts, and we're going to do it. We're going to go and do this on our own. And so because they were so successful, they did end up getting signed to bigger deals and, all that. But it was really trial and error. And I think at that time, I realized I really wanted to work with creators and help them financially, help build a base for them financially so they could continue to make art. So that happened with bands, and it then happened with music festivals. It then happened with music venues, nonprofits, all that. It's like, if you have an ability to help creators organize and monetize what they're doing, I think so many times that's kind of like, that's not the cool job because you're helping people make money. But at the end of the day, all these people needed to live and make their art. So I think once I kind of got hooked on that, I was like, oh, this is a thing. And this is maybe a unique skill that I have that I think I'm into this. But Brett, I think to answer your question, what was my dream job? I think I was mimicking what I heard my parents say, which was, I want to be a lawyer.
And it's funny you mentioned that, right? Like whenever someone goes, oh, I'm going to be an artist, and they're like, well, let's think about, what could be plan B? And, you could be a starting artist or, so there's a lot of times where parents do put that pressure, but like you mentioned, our daughter works in politics and so proud. And then, music. But once you find exactly what it is you're passionate about, that just makes work all that more amazing. And I want to talk, I want to hear your climb. So you work with these bands, obviously Hootie and the Blowfish are successful. How do you go from that to finding, huge festivals, working with such brands, having that marketing capacity? Obviously, you have that skill set of problem solving, collaboration, putting the pieces together, and where people really need, sometimes artistic people don't know how to do all of the things that you know how to do.
Yeah. Well, I sold my company when I was 27. At that first company, I moved to San Francisco to really evolve how we were servicing our bands. At that point, we were still mailing postcards around to tell people when Dave Matthews was going to play in their town. And no, we weren't even emailing yet. So it's like digital was happening. Digital started to happen. And I met two sisters, and I started one of the first network networks online for girls and women. So it was, really great content. The guy that runs TED Conference incubated us, Chris Anderson, the British Chris Anderson. And we raised money. They spun us off. They venture capital. We went public. That whole crazy .com boom and bust situation. I went to 17 for a year in New York. And that really was like being part of a really great idea in digital and being caught up in a crazy time in the market again, right? Then I went to New York. 17 magazine had been a magazine for about 50 years. They really didn't know how they were going to diversify, how they were going to show up online, if you can imagine. I went back to look at a speaking engagement I did in 1999 at South by. And if you've ever spoken at South by, if you do it again, you put in your name and it says, have you ever spoken before? Yes. And then there's a database you can find yourself. What year was that? 1999. What was that panel? The panel was called Forbidden Fruit, Women on the Web. And it was like, the question was, are women going to use the internet? So it's like, think about like their trajectory of what happens between 1999 and 2024. I mean, 25 years of like, y'all, yes, women are going to use the internet. So I worked with 17 for about a year, helped them with their digital sales strategy, and really realized, you know what, man, the prom content, Britney Spears content, it wasn't really for me. And a friend was at Live Nation in LA, and he said, we need somebody to come work with the guy that runs touring globally in sponsorship. So we want somebody that's sold and worked with brands, but we want somebody also that's worked with artists. Because you're going to need to work with artists.
Sounds like the perfect job for you.
It was awesome. And they said, if you could not wear a blazer around these guys too, it would be cool. Like, you got to be a little bit cool. I was like, okay, I'll work on it. So there was a real, at that point, I'm young 30s and I'm moving to LA with a Southern accent. I'm moving from New York to LA with a Southern accent. Am I going to lose the accent? I'm going to keep it. How many women are in the room? Not many. You know what? I'm going to keep the accent. I will, be yourself. Absolutely be authentic and be yourself. And people definitely remembered you, the woman in the meeting, the girl in the meeting, or that Southern person in the meeting. That was all good. So that's how I ended up getting to work on what now has been like a 22-year career in working with music venues, festivals, and artists. The first main thing I worked on there was Ozfest. So I worked with Ozzy and Sharon and that whole crew to get all those bands, those metal bands going. And that was like a 25-date tour, 500,000 fans a summer for 5 years, which was really great. It was really great. Probably had a System of a Down when they were like the tiny band, just starting the tour. Exactly. Lamb of God, System of a Down, Marilyn Manson, all the, Black Sabbath, all of it. And it was great. And again, I was the only one that didn't have tattoos. It didn't matter. I had a place on the tour. I was myself. And it was a fantastic, it was a really incredibly well-run tour and whole machine. So that's really, I guess what's also cool about that is obviously Sharon Osbourne being a powerhouse woman herself and kind of running the show. Yeah. You're in good company there. Definitely good company. And mostly women ran that tour. So the woman that booked it from Live Nation was the only woman promoter at Live Nation in the world at that time. And then I was sponsorship, another woman was marketing, another woman was like tour operations, and Sharon. So it was really definitely different at that time that you had that many women in music on a tour, and especially a metal tour. If South by Southwest only knew that women would use the internet in the future and book Ozfest. So after doing that, you're at Live Nation. Does your work with, some of those major brands, are you doing that at the same time? Do you have the freedom to kind of run your own company at the same time as? No, I was definitely I was just at Live Nation at that time. I mean, at that point, your kind of portfolio are all the House of Blues venues, all the rock clubs in the US, all the amphitheaters. You know, a lot of those, how we were cutting deals across all those venues. I mean, nothing too exciting, but it's like, are we going to pour Red Bull or Monster? You know, and how many millions of dollars does either one have to pay for us to pour that product at either? So I learned a lot about that.
At this time, does Live Nation own all of those venues?
They did, and they were Clear Channel Entertainment at that time, but then they end up spinning off to become Live Nation.
Okay. And then just correct me for my ignorance, Golden Voice, AEG, separate venues.
That's a whole different, that's like the other kickball team.
Okay.
Live Nation's one kickball team, and then AEG's the other one.
Okay.
So AEG has a lot of, you know, they own LA Live for y'all, you know, downtown. Where I'm going to call it Staples, but it's crypto.com arena and everything around there. And they own a business, sports, and entertainment district like that in London and Singapore and Sydney, Berlin, and LA. So they really own a lot of real estate and then do global touring, Taylor Swift, Elton John. I can't think of, like, just kind of on and on. They do touring and then do festivals. So Coachella and Stagecoach. And then that's how I was able to work with Tyler, the Creator, who y'all may know is from LA. I don't know if anybody's a fan of Tyler, but really great guy, and has a carnival every year at Dodgers Stadium parking lot. It's in November. And so that's kind of an extension of his creative brand. So he's very particular about the kinds of sponsors he wanted on his show. He doesn't drink, which is great. I don't think he never has. And so he didn't want any alcohol sponsors, which is great. Totally cool. He definitely wanted a non-smoking campaign to be there. So we did that too. So it was really just making sure the kind of brands we were bringing in to help offset the costs were also in line with the artist.
I love it when an artist has a vision. They know exactly what they want to do. They find the right team to execute, and make it come to fruition. So when you're at Live Nation, Coachella is AEG and that Golden Voice, the other kickball team. Are you done with Live Nation, or do you stay with Live Nation?
I left Live Nation.
Okay.
To start a music festival in Michigan with a crew of people that I'd worked with from the very beginning. And they said, hey, listen, we found a place in Michigan. We think it could be a great place to do a festival, a camping festival. Would you quit your job? And I had like a 2-year-old at the time, a 1 or 2-year-old. Quit your job and just come with us and like help us start this festival. And we did, and it was amazing. And it was called Rothbury, and actually AEG were one of the investors in the festival. Ended up going away for a year in the recession, and it came back as a festival called Electric Forest, which is still around.
I have heard of Electric Forest, and I've seen all of the aerial pictures.
Yeah,
I'm like,
great.
One day I have to get there,
Brett,
but I need like that VIP access because that looks too overwhelming.
With you. If you go, I will meet you there. We'll go. You got it. It's really cool. It's an art project, like in a forest in the middle of this music festival. They really needed to lean into these great big green spaces that they had on the festival site, but you don't want to knock down all these trees in this forest that's been planted as like a big sort of civil works project. So they ended up making the forest its own cool art project. So walking through it, maybe you're laying in a hammock or in some kind of gong sound bath or.
I love it. What's so amazing about you is you've got the entrepreneur mindset. You have the intrapreneur mindset. You're willing to take risks for yourself. You're also willing to take those risks and take a company and a vision and take that to the next level. Such respect to have a 2-year-old and go, yeah, I'm gonna quit my stable Live Nation job and go create this.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and go create this festival. It just takes cojones to do that.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
So you do that festival. Talk me through from there. You obviously then have that relationship with AEG, and they see, all of your skill sets. How do you then go to Coachella, which is obviously one of the largest festivals
it's so great
worldwide?
So I went back there, I ended up having another kiddo and did Rothbury for a little bit longer. And she was actually 12 weeks old at the festival, which I don't know that I recommend bringing a baby to a festival, but she started sleeping through the night there. But then I ended up going to AEG and really doing something similar there. It seems like they're the same kind of business, but the way they do it is a little bit different. They're a privately held company. Live Nation's a publicly traded company, so that's just different. I think AEG is a little bit more authentic and boutique than Live Nation. It's a little bit smaller, even though it's a global company. So I really was just hired there to kind of do the same thing. How do you work with the creators, which really there are the festival creators? How are you helping the fan experience, and how are you helping bring in the right brands to do that? Of course, the brands are bringing in money, but they're also bringing in experiences.
So with a Coachella, I've attended Coachella in the very beginning. I've done it, working the way up from, staying in a campground to doing the hotels to doing, an RV to eventually going with a manager and doing the behind the scenes, going like, this is so much better than having to wait in those crazy bathroom lines. But I've seen it just evolve from, almost being like that amazing. I can remember the Tool and the Rage Against the Machine year where it was so hot and they had to pass out hats with ice because people were passing out. And just every time I go to a festival of that magnitude, it is almost like it's its own city. Yeah. I love watching the economics of the, all of the sheriffs that are working overtime, to the CVSs and all the restaurants that are making tons of money. Coachella is such a big thing. You talked about South by Southwest. I remember hearing somebody, a bar in South by Southwest saying, with this one weekend, we can make enough money to sustain ourselves for the rest of the year.
That's right.
We had another guest, Austin Whitney, who handles the ADA component of Coachella. He's an amazing soul. And he was talking about, making sure people really were handicapped, using the handicap placards and working with the police to bus people and generate. There are so many masterminds behind Coachella.
All the details.
Yeah. So all of that is absolutely fascinating. So are you involved in all of those brands coming in?
Yeah, I worked on that for a long time until I left in 2021 to start Good Things. But yeah, worked on all those brands.
Talk me through.
There's a big team that does it, but yeah.
Okay, talk me through.
Team that sells it, and there's a big team that executes it, and makes sure it all gets loaded in, and all the logistics.
And it completely evolves. I just saw another advertisement for a new stage, and a new thing. It's massive. So talk me through starting Good Things.
In COVID, there were a couple work groups at AEG where we were working on DE&I, how to make a lot of our events more inclusive, and also much more sustainable. And I really realized what I wanted to do, I think, with the next part of my career, because I'd been selling sponsorship in music for 20 years. I have teenagers at home, and so those babies are now teenagers, and one's about to go to college. And the 2-year-old from that, festival is now about to go to college. So I really thought there was a way to still work with a lot of venues and music properties, but then also, how are you helping create impact? So right now we're working on a summer school tour, which is 6 young bands. We are going to announce it in 2 weeks. They're going to go play like 26 cities this summer. And Microsoft is going to support the tour. But the tour is also going to give $1 per ticket to save the music. So that's going to go back into public schools to make sure there are music programs in public schools. Microsoft is going to match that. So we think definitely there's a way that brands want to show up and do good, but they want to be authentic around it. That's a little bit of a tough puzzle to solve, but that's what we're working on now with Good Things. So we're still working music venues and festivals, but we're threading through.
I love the, $1 here, Microsoft matching it. There's so much that can be done with everyone working together and helping out nonprofits. We actually just had Jessica from Human Ticks, which is a ticketing company where the fees go directly to nonprofits. So
That's
kind of
cool.
changing the game with the Ticketmaster. Does Live Nation and AEG both have contracts with Ticketmaster? I think Live Nation owns Ticketmaster, or there was that merger.
Live Nation owns Ticketmaster, and AEG has a company called Access, AXS.
Got it. Okay, so that's their equivalent of owning the tickets and
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And would you say in most of these shows, the money is really in the alcohol and the sales of food?
It's in the ancillaries. So for ancillaries, that's premium seats, sponsorship, food and beverage, and parking.
Got it.
So
Okay.
the $5, $10 of parking or whatever really adds up.
Okay. So kind of throughout your career, you've done diverse roles. How do you approach making pivotal career decisions? Like obviously deciding to move away from Live Nation with, a 2-year-old, other than just having the guts to make and follow where your heart, desires.
Yeah.
How do you make those career pivotal decisions?
I mean, after I had kids, it was obviously a family decision a lot of the time around how we were going to logistically make it work to raise our kids if I'm out working on maybe 8 festivals a year, and how is that going to take me away from home and travel? So that has a lot to do with it, how we parent our kids and share responsibility. I have a really great co-parent that I, parent the kids with, we're divorced, but we're very close co-parents. He lives in Austin. We both have, we both share all that responsibility. So that's a big factor, especially after having kids. I also think moving away from Los Angeles, I think we made it a little bit easier on ourselves and a little bit less expensive to live because we moved to Austin 14 years ago. So for us, we were able to actually see our kids more, and we were in traffic less, and we almost didn't have to make as much money. So we had a little bit more flexibility with what we were doing. I feel like I'm not totally answering your question, Brett.
No,
I think, my mom, who was a school teacher till she was 40, and then became a financial advisor for people at Dean Witter and then Morgan Stanley for 25 years. She was a really big, mentor for us as kids. Nobody can tell a young Southern school teacher that they're going to manage hundreds of millions of dollars of people's money, right? At that time. My mom wasn't allowed to have her own checkbook or a credit card when she was a young mom in the 70s without asking my dad to co-sign. I don't know if you guys know that, but like women couldn't have their own checkbooks, checking accounts or credit cards without asking their dad or their husband. So, wow.
How far we have come.
I know, totally. And women are on the internet. So she got sick in 21 I spent a lot of time with her, and I was about to be at the 20-year mark of selling sponsorship. And I realized there wasn't a lot of room to innovate around social impact. And I thought, I'm going to leave AEG in a good note. I'm going to go spend time with my mom. She had cancer. She knew she only had like 6 months to live. I don't mean to be so serious, you all.
No, those are some major decisions.
Yeah. AEG was lovely. They said, we absolutely understand. And you can come back. And I said, I think I really want to focus on impact. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And we had one client. And I kind of started over. I have this laptop that I'm talking to you guys on. I spent time with my mom. She passed. So I was really glad I got to spend time with her. And I just started the company on this laptop. And we got one client, and then we got 3 clients. And that's kind of how we started good things. And I don't know that I'm totally answering your question, Brett, but sometimes.
No, but it's interesting as I'm reflecting on what you're saying. It resonates because similar situation with my father and cancer, and, going 100 miles an hour on all these projects. And then you realize like it all means nothing. You kind of go, I wish I didn't do all that and just kind of had a little more time with dad. So, yeah. But what's interesting is when I asked you that question, my next question was going to ask you about mentorship and who has been a mentor, for you. But it's interesting that your mom, 40 years in education, and then goes to a completely different industry, and you have just conquered all these different industries, and you have no problem, moving around it and doing it. It's interesting that, your mom made that move, and, it's a great example that you can always reinvent yourself and reinvent your brand to do what you want to do. You don't have to be stuck doing something that you're not feeling anymore. And sometimes, things run its course, or you've been so successful in certain things and you want to try making that impact. And, you got to respect that. Coming back to the mentor, is there somebody, obviously, mom and dad, huge in family and raising you, but is there a mentor that comes to mind in this industry?
REM's manager, this guy, Burruss Downs, is also a law professor at UGA. The band was so successful in the late 80s, early 90s. And they were also really big in historic preservation in Georgia and also in politics and helping, people get elected, et cetera. And I remember calling him from DC and saying, I don't know that I want to work in politics. I have 3 bands that have called me. And he said, well, look, I manage a band and make a big difference in social impact. So you can do both. You can actually make a difference and work with rock bands and do both of those things. So he was always really influential. It turns out my son is going to go to where his daughter went to college, which is really rando because it's a really small college in Pennsylvania. That's just kind of a coincidence. But he was really great. Sharon Osbourne was really great. And Jane Holman. I'm 55 almost, and they're probably in their 70s, I think. So they were just amazing. There were just really almost no women in the room. There were no other women vice presidents in my department globally at Live Nation when I was there, in the beginning. So they were just fantastic and kind of paved a lot of the way. So that was really great. But then a lot of people that have taken risks, I have a friend, Afdel Aziz. He was head of marketing at T-Mobile, Absolute Vodka. Like he had all these really big jobs. He grew up in Mumbai and in London. He held these really big jobs. And then he just left and started a social impact consultancy. So he's been a really great friend and mentor to me. He said, stay at your company and find everybody else who might have their light on around social impact. You guys are doing such a great job of bringing together 185,000 people a weekend at Coachella. There's a lot of impact you guys can make there. And we did. So, a lot of friends and colleagues. I wanted to say too, because it was one of your questions. what can you do to keep upskilling and getting more education and fine tuning? I'll say I didn't graduate from college. I started my business before I had finished my last 3 classes. I think that's not a great thing to tell everybody, but that's what happened. I didn't end up getting more traditional schooling, but I think even if I sat in the same job function for 20 years, the world continued to change around me. So how you're communicating with fans, how a brand is going to show up, the content that we could stream now to everybody through the internet. You could stream all of Coachella through somebody's laptop. Just everything we're able to do continued to evolve. So I think being really curious about that is, that's kind of the best. I mean, there's no doubt what technology's done for everybody in 25 years, but especially in our business.
It's funny. I just one of these last Coachellas, I remember sitting on the couch watching the bands I wanted to watch, not having to walk thousands of steps.
Yeah.
Cold beer without having to pay $18 a beer. Bathroom, no line. So you're absolutely correct. And it's true. Like you have to evolve. And it's just so crazy to think you were passing out, the flyers to get people to come to shows. And I can remember those days prior to the internet where you would go down to the venue that you were going to perform at. You had to pass out flyers and try to win over fans by being personable, then evolving to a MySpace and then, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, how important is adaptability been in your success?
I think it's really important. I think the only way, what just keeps coming top of mind is the ability to try to slow down sometimes and really listen. What does the brand need? How do they need to show up? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to communicate? And then how do they really fit in with a project like Coachella or any other music festival or at a venue? How does that really connect with that fan? And what is it really authentic? Is that a real authentic connection or not? And listening to everybody. Sometimes those things don't go together. So you have to slow down. What are your 10 things that you need to happen? What are your 10 things? And maybe can we find 3 that are common? And then let's bring everybody together. That was a lot of the job.
It's like listening. When we think about communication, everyone wants to talk, but no one wants to listen. It's interesting that you said you have to kind of hear what people want, coming back to Tyler, the creator, what were his wants, and then finding those right companies to match those wants. And obviously being a great communicator, I can stamp you with that. Listening is a vital component. When these brands come to you or you're going after a brand, we talk about the 60-second pitch. You get in an elevator and you have the opportunity to pitch your idea or to market yourself as your own personal brand. Obviously, you've worked with tons of huge brands. Do they give you that 60-second pitch? Is it almost like a Shark Tank situation where, they're making that presentation and within 60 seconds, are you going to work with that company?
It's a lot slower. There's a cadence to brands usually start at the end of the summer and into the fall to think about what they want to do in the next year. So usually that's when you're going to meet with a lot of those brands, listen to what they're looking for, and then figure out what do you have that might be a match, then coming back to them and saying, what about this? What about this budget? How do you want to do this, et cetera? Sometimes brands come to you and say, okay, we know we have this initiative. We know we want to roll out this kind of taco. We're going to roll them out in May, June, and July. We want to reach 18 to 24-year-olds. What do you have for us to roll out our tacos? So it really is just about creating relationships, making sure when you do a deal, that you're honoring your word. Many times weather has affected festivals. Tornado hit one of the festivals I did last year and nobody was hurt, but we lost a day. Weather's hit festivals in New Orleans. So sometimes after the festival, you may say, hey, I don't know that you got the full value of what you spent. How can we make good? How can we give you something? Or maybe we give you a credit if you do it again next year. So just making sure you're kind of honoring your word, and then you have a great relationship. They'll pick up the phone next time you call them, or they'll trust you.
Yeah, it's a huge lesson right there. I mean, that's
happen.
Going above and beyond, honoring your word and being personable. Is there a mantra you live by?
I don't know if there's a mantra, but I would say being yourself and being authentic to yourself is kind of the easiest story to keep up with. Okay. Right? That's
keeping it real. Keeping it real. It's okay to have the accent. It's okay to have the accent. It's okay to not rock the blazer. You go in the room and you hold down the room. I have one last question, then I'm going to open it up to some of these young creatives who I'm sure have questions for you. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Do not worry that you don't have it all figured out. Do not worry. Keep moving forward. Do something. Try a few things out. You may love them, you may hate them, and that's all like you said, Brett, that's equally as valuable. Because it's data, understanding like what you're really connecting with.
I love it. You don't have to have all the answers now.
You don't.
Figure it out as you go. Yeah. I got one last question. I apologize. I lied.
That's good.
What is the biggest, out of all of the brands, the festivals, getting Clinton elected, what is the biggest thing that you are proud of from your career?
It's real simple. I just think staying with it. Although, it's really hard, and it was a lot of flying and a lot of travel with little kids, and there was just like, definitely felt like I was blazing some trails there. And just sticking with it. That's not a real sexy answer, but that's my answer.
You've had a sexy career, so you're good.
Just keeping going. Thank you. I really appreciate everybody participating and listening, and I really appreciate it. And I think sometimes you're just so busy, just stopping and being able to talk to you all is such a treat. And I just really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And honestly, I hope reflecting and resonating and just kind of reflecting back on all of what you've experienced, be extremely proud. You have done so much. And
thanks, Brett.
I know you got much more ahead of you. So cheers to you, to good health. And thank you again for giving us an hour of your time.
Thanks so much, all. Take care.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.